We'll call this meeting to order. Participants are reminded just to mute your microphone or phone when you're not speaking, and to unmute your microphone and use the raise hand feature so I can see who is waiting to speak. Because board members are online this evening, all votes will be done via roll call. First agenda item tonight is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We will now vote by roll call to approve tonight's agenda.
Allenberg,
Aye.
Aram,
Aye.
Barry,
Aye.
Birdman,
Aye.
Gabler,
Aye.
Hoovy,
Aye.
Member Mann. I don't.
He's getting signed on. He's getting signed on right now.
Okay.
By a vote of 6-0, tonight's agenda is approved. Dr. Stanley, would you please review tonight's agenda for us?
Absolutely. Shortly, we will be hearing from members of the public. We have a few consent items. The board will receive a report for discussion on 2024 graduation, several policies for review. For action, we have Minnesota State High School League membership resolution. We have information on our cybersecurity service agreement with Arctic Wolf that we're looking for action on, long-term facilities maintenance, and then final review of a few policies as well. We'll have leadership updates, and there are a couple of information items that are in the board packet as well.
Thank you, Dr. Stanley. We do not have excellence in action this month, so we're going to move straight to our hearing from members of the public. And before we hear from them, just a reminder about our community comment guidelines. First of all, we want to thank community members and our stakeholders for being flexible with our community comment guidelines. We've tried to maintain our community comment process despite moving our meetings online, and we're happy that we've been able to offer virtual community comments. When individuals signed in and asked to speak, you acknowledged an understanding and adherence to Board Policy 206, which are community comment guidelines. Pursuant to this policy, each speaker has a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. When those 3 minutes are up, you must conclude your remarks. If you do not wrap up quickly, your time allotment at the virtual meeting will end. This time is not designated to address items concerning specific staff or students, and personal attacks by anyone at the podium are unacceptable. If this happens, you will be warned, and if you persist, you will no longer be able to continue your remarks. Any feedback about district employees needs to go to their respective site level leader, the superintendent, or be submitted to the board in writing. During public comment period, our role as a board is to listen, but this is not the place for the board to resolve any concerns, and as such, no comments will be made from the board. Issues will potentially be referred to the superintendent for appropriate follow-up. Thank you very much for your cooperation. And we have 2 members of the public that will be providing us with feedback tonight. And the first is Callie Peterson.
I'll unmute. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. Okay. Hello, my name is Callie Peterson, and I am a parent of an EPS student. On behalf of a group of Edina parents, I would like to thank the school board and the superintendent for the work that is being done to restrict and enforce policy around smart devices in schools. We have reviewed the minutes from the May 21st school board work session and feel that the proposal presented is not aggressive enough for K through 12 students. We support the recommended stance for elementary and middle school students to keep personal devices away for the day. We agree that for the district's youngest scholars, phones and devices are nothing more than a distraction in school, which will affect their engagement, interaction with others, and mental health. For high school students, the new language that was recommended by the work group suggesting a school-wide policy of phones being away, limited, or okay will not be enough to eliminate the massive distraction that phones cause. The temptation for students to check their phones will simply be too strong for a verbal policy. According to Common Sense Media, most teens receive up to 200 notifications a day. School is not a place for this type of distraction, and it is our responsibility as adults to protect the education and mental health of our youth. Phones are a clear disruptor of learning and greatly limit face-to-face interaction amongst students. This includes inside the classroom, in the hallways, and at lunch. Regarding discipline for this new tiered policy in the middle and high schools, what are the consequences for not complying? What lengths do teachers have to go to enforce a consequence? How much time will be spent during a lesson asking students to put away their phones or to report misuse of phones? This burden and new policy will fall directly on teachers, who I'm sure we can all agree have enough on their plate. As a parent group, a few of us had the opportunity to meet with a representative from Yonder, a phone pouch company. He allowed us to borrow a sample and an unlocking device, which we have practiced using. In sum, it's a seamless process which allows students to always keep their devices in their possession, but most importantly, away and not accessible from bell to bell. Edina prides itself on being a district of excellence. Our public school district could be a trailblazer in terms of managing technology with our students and eliminating the negativity that comes with cell phones, specifically in schools. And I need to check this, but along with 765 others, have signed a petition supporting the restriction of cell phones from bell to bell. To access this petition, you can visit change.org and search restrict cell phones in Edina Public Schools from bell to bell. For those of you who are watching online or at home, if you are interested in this topic, please join our Facebook group and join the conversation advocating for Edina youth in the digital world. In conclusion, we would like to thank the board and superintendent for your efforts that you have already done, and we look forward to working with you, not against you, on this topic.
Thank you, Mrs. Peterson.
Yes.
Next, we have Megan Sweeney. Is Megan Sweeney online? Okay.
She's just trying to get off of mute.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Can the admin unmute? Oh, there she
Got
is.
it. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I apologize. I'm not on a
No
lot
problem.
of Google Meet. Yes, I'm Megan Sweeney. I have 3 high school age kids. I just have a senior who graduated, and then I will have a freshman and a junior who I didn't tell I'm talking tonight because they don't want to know. But I am here to advocate also for no cell phones at the high school level. I want to break for my kids. I want to break for all the kids who are at the high school. I know you guys are a very well-read, well-educated group. You know the statistics, you know the facts, you know we're all humans. We all have phones. We know how they work. We've had this 12-year experiment to see if cell phones and education are compatible. And the overwhelming evidence is that it is negative for learning. And there's really very little on the positive side of things. And those effects are even worse for at-risk kids. You know, my daughter's friends come over to our house all the time, and sometimes I will say, hey, let's put our phones away for a while. And some of them have said to me, I'm going to come over so you can take my phone away for a while. I know that there would be absolute resistance, but as a parent, I know this is a good and right thing for our kids. The reality is you can have the measures at the high school, but kids are going to be on their phones until we have this culture where phones are not a part of learning, until we have this line that says you don't have these while you are learning at school. That culture is not going to change. And I think it's going to just take the leadership from the top to do that. You know, I've asked my kids what actually happens in phones during school. And they're like, okay, anytime someone's bored, they're on their phone. When kids go to the bathroom, they stay in the bathroom and they play video games. They look on their phones when they're walking in the halls. They're playing video games at lunch instead of talking to each other. All this is reality. I just think it needs to be a whole group leadership thing to kind of piggyback on what Callie said. Edina is an exceptional school district. I'm so thankful to be part of it, and I want us to be leaders. I know that these new measures are coming into place. What I would love is that my kids, my freshman and my junior, could have, you know, the rest of their school experience be without cell phones. That would be my great hope. That maybe even by December this year, we say, hey, we're gonna, starting in January, cell phones are no longer gonna be a part of what we're doing. And I think it would be to everyone's benefit. And thank you for serving, all of you. You have a difficult and thankless job, and I truly appreciate your work. And thank you for giving me a chance to speak for a few minutes.
Thank you, Ms. Sweeney.
Yeah.
That concludes our community comments for the evening. So thank you to those that spoke tonight, and people are always welcome to come to our monthly meeting to talk about things that are important to them. We are going to move on to our consent agenda. Is there anything that anyone would like to remove from our consent agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We will now vote by roll call to approve the consent agenda.
Allenberg,
Aye.
Aram,
Aye.
Barry,
Aye.
Birdman,
Aye.
Gabler,
Aye.
Hoovy,
Aye.
Mann.
Aye.
Thank you.
By a vote of 7-0, the consent agenda is approved. And moving on to our discussion items, we have two of them tonight. And first is a 2024 graduation debrief. Dr. Stanley?
Thanks very much, Chair Ellenberg and Board of Directors. I and Principal Paul Paetzel. Paul, I believe that you're here as well. We are here to provide a debrief overview of the 2024 graduation. School Board Administration received many communications regarding concerns for the 2024 Edina High School graduation. And we have been working throughout the summer since graduation to provide feedback loops, to garner feedback from families, and to put a process in place. We communicated with families a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to make certain that all board members were made aware. We provided an outline in the board packet that provided a detailed overview of the processes that we've taken, the emails that we received for patterns. We actually received, we put out a survey. We received a survey with just over 300 responses, and we analyzed those for patterns, for themes. We conducted a SWOT analysis based on that information, which I included the SWOT analysis inside of the report. And then there's a summary of the next steps that we are planning to take. So with that, we will open it up for board members for any questions or comments that you might have.
Board members, questions or comments? Director Birdman.
Thank you. I really appreciated the feedback, the postgraduate feedback and event analysis. That was very helpful to understand that. I think I'm curious as to one of the statements that talked about was we had translation services that were made available at the ceremony, but unfortunately, because of the inclement weather and everybody coming into the lobby, that was not really readily available to several people. Can you please remind us what language services we were providing for the guests to come in? What languages were those in? What community members were we targeting for those services?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we have started using is translation headsets. We find that our families find them much more useful. in when they are using the headsets. They feel like they can hear more. There's not distraction, and so we use the headsets. And we really target our top 2 languages. And so in that particular case, it was for our families who speak Somali and our families who speak Spanish. Again, the table was set up in the lobby area where, as you entered Mariucci Arena, and due to the inclement weather, usually folks would stay out on the veranda on a sunny evening until it was time to come in for graduation. And folks just came in because you'll remember it was a really bad rainstorm that evening. And they came in, and that caused the table where the company that we work with had set up just to be blocked, and people they couldn't see it. And so they did not access that.
Got it. Thank you. And my follow-up question is that during the presentation, especially when Principal Paetzel was greeting everybody, talking about what the agenda was, how we were going to do the comments about what the decorum was and what the expectations were, and so on and so forth, all of that would have been translated into those languages for people who are using them. It would have been a live translation about what was happening from that standpoint. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Director Barry?
Hi. So the report noted that about 5 minutes before door open, the U of M staff reported that they were not, in fact, be collecting tickets. Did we ever receive an explanation as to why they were no longer able to do so when that was part of the plan?
Paul, I know that your staff debriefed with Mariucci. Did they provide any greater detail for why? My understanding was part of it was with their staff, they just determined that they weren't going to be able to do bag checks and check tickets at the last minute.
Yeah, so in a small debriefing, and we will be following up with deeper debriefings in the near future. But initially, it was that the staff was a bit overwhelmed with the size of the crowd in the entrance area, and they put as a priority to check bags rather than to check and scan tickets. And so,
Oh, he froze on us.
Oh, there he is.
Paul, you froze a little bit on us, but basically,
Oh, no.
that they had, with the crowd that was in the lobby, they were a little overwhelmed. And so they chose to put a priority on checking bags for graduation paraphernalia as opposed to checking tickets at that time. And again, it literally was 5 minutes before graduation started that we were notified about that.
yeah, great summary. That's exactly what I was trying to communicate.
Yeah.
Director Gabler?
Yes, Dr. Stanley and Principal Paetzel, I want to thank you and your team for putting this together. And if anybody is watching this that did reach out with concerns about graduation, I encourage them to read the report. It's very thorough. And I appreciate reading the report and knowing that there's a plan in place and next steps that are really concrete to help us just make sure that we hit the mark next year. So I want to thank your team and all the work, because I know you've put a lot of time into gathering this feedback and making a plan going forward. So
Thank you.
Director Birdman?
I think that there's one more statement I'd also like to make, is that I want to comment on, because I haven't heard it from anyone as far as who's commented on the graduation. Our students were a model of great behavior and of respect and of decorum and all of that. And those are the people that we were there celebrating. And so I just wanted to put a shout out that our graduates actually demonstrated appropriate behavior throughout the entire ceremony. And I think that goes a lot, says about our students. Our community members, our adults, I think we could learn from our students in terms of what's appropriate behavior. But I was pleased as punch that our staff and the students themselves were a great model of how to behave appropriately for the ceremony that we had. So I just wanted to give that shout out. Thank you.
Director Aaron?
Thanks. I also wanted to reiterate, thanks for the planning, and Paul, for all your work you did. 2 questions I had. One, do we have a rough estimate of the number of attendees that were there that night? And then two, when talking with the Mariucci staff, I just wanted to confirm that the people that were doing the security were all Mariucci provided staff personnel. And then secondly, if there was any thought about doing or having Edina Public Schools staff be part of the security or kind of crowd control part of it? And if not, is that even feasible?
Paul,
Yes.
you want to start with the information about the attendees?
Yes, thank you very much. So we were planning for roughly 6,000 people in attendance. I believe that we were short of that 6,000 mark. So we estimate somewhere around 5,000, maybe a few more that actually attended. And then as far as our plan, we did have a plan where we were going to have staff checking or scanning the tickets and talking with Mariucci. They typically would provide that service through their own personnel from the University of Minnesota. So that was the plan that we went with. And when we received notice that that had changed, we weren't in a position to get more staff to do that. That is an area of discussion, not only for the tickets, but also for supervision. And typically we focus on the student body, but we are considering using Edina staff to monitor the audience as well. So those are considerations. And we'll be seeking more input in the fall.
Thank you very much.
We did have, because the initial planning really surrounded around ensuring that we were going to have a safe graduation related to our experiences with protests at the school board, and we just didn't want that to happen. So we did have our SROs that were there. So we did have some security staff, 2 security staff members. Again, as Paul stated, as recent as the Monday before graduation, we had worked really closely with the U of M security department, and they assured us that they really felt like they had enough of their own security on staff to really handle everything.
Thank you, Dr. Stamp. Thank you.
Director Gaper?
Sorry, I did have one question. I know tonight's conversation is about the high school experience. I know we received a couple of emails about other experiences throughout the district. Is there a plan in place to make sure that our communication or some of these, at a minimum, some of the conversations or the communication going out to families before these events are really clear about expectations, noisemakers, things like that?
Yeah, and a couple of things. We did receive a couple of communications related to graduation at one of our middle schools. Principal Bass has actually contacted and worked with those families directly related to their concerns, so they have been communicated with. And yes, we will send out communications, and we have to figure out some next steps, because similarly, those communications went out ahead of time, just like they did for the high school graduation. So we have immediate feedback that's saying that's not enough communication, or it's not the communication that's working for everyone. So he too will be working with a cadre of individuals on his team and in the community to make sure that they have a process in place.
Director Bergman?
I have one more suggestion. We were not the only graduation ceremony that experienced similar types of disruption and behavior from the audience. As we're considering best steps and approaches and things like that, as we're getting more feedback, I don't know if we've already considered talking to other schools within our general geographic area. I know Eden Prairie certainly had some challenges also at Mariucci. Maybe there might be some best practices that might come about with not just our own feedback, but looking at other feedback from other people who's experienced something similar.
Yeah, that is a really good idea, Director Bergman. On this side of it, the planning, the figuring out what has happened, things like that, superintendents, we have definitely been in contact with one another. Paul, I know that you've had a high school principal meeting, since graduations occurred. I don't know if you had talked about that, but certainly we've talked about what occurred. One of the things that we spoke about really related to the graduation was around acoustics as well at the venue, and some commonalities with that was related with concerns across superintendents was related to acoustics. And so I know that, all of us are going to be having those conversations. And I like that idea to really do some, as we're engaging our community, how might we do some compare and contrasting with what it looks like when the other districts are engaging their communities, because they might have some creative ideas. I like that.
We did, that was a topic. Monthly, I meet with the Lake Conference principals. And so we did have that as a kind of a debriefing topic, and we'll continue to talk about that going into this next year, about what plans are being made at all the different districts. And each district has some different nuances in terms of that event. But we are sharing all of our ideas and providing everyone with all the steps that we are taking. And we have received a really positive feedback about the preparation that went into our planning. So we did share those plans with the rest of the Lake Conference as well.
Well, thank you, Dr. Stanley and Principal Paetzel and the rest of your team for working on this. I know that you've put a lot of work into your debrief and what will be next steps coming up in the fall, and I appreciate it. The only question I have is I would love for you guys to come back and update the board once you've gotten further along in the focus groups you have with families. I guess if there are any, I would only ask if there are any changes to update us and update the community, so we can know maybe early spring, late winter, what will be going on with graduation. It would be nice. So.
I see several board members' heads shaking, so I think that that's something that the rest of the board is looking for as well. And so we will be able to bring that information to the board.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, next we're going to move on in our discussion items, and we have our review. So I'll turn to Director Gabler.
I'm just changing seats here. The sun is coming down at the Transportation Center. It's good. Thanks, Elliot. I appreciate it. All right, we have a number of policies up for discussion this evening, and I believe our first policy is policy 103, which Dr. Becker is going to walk us through.
Good evening, and policy 103, bringing it back. There are no substantial changes to policy 3. We were cleaning up language, and we were adding a Minnesota statute that now supports the policy.
Board members, are there any questions for Dr. Becker? Okay, well, great. Then this policy will move forward for action in August. Thank you, Franny. All right, and then next up, we have policy 113, which is data requests. And do we have Director Edwards on this evening?
Yes.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, perfect. Hi, Daphne.
Hello.
Do you want to talk to us a little bit about policy 113? This is one of those policies that we review annually. And so board members may recall seeing this relatively recently, and that's because we look at it every year.
Yes, and thank you for the opportunity to provide some explanation of some changes that were recommended, because there's considerably more, I'm recommending considerably more in the policy than there has been historically. And that really centers around managing data requests for the district now for the past couple of years and becoming more familiar with the types of requests that we receive. I think our old policy was a general blanket policy, whereas I'm seeing different types of requests come in. And my required response to a request is based on the type of request that's received. So I thought that it was important to spell out more of those details. Arguably, the recommendations cover even more than what I've seen to date. So, a decision was made to recommend something that's very broad, comprehensive, that would cover what we've seen historically, what I've seen to date, and what might come up in the future. Rather than limiting to the policy to just what's been seen before, I took the approach of having the policy cover broadly things that could come up in terms of data requests.
Okay, thank you. Board members, what questions do we have for Director Edwards? Chair Ellenberg.
I don't necessarily have a question per se, and I appreciate your approach, Director Edwards. I think it's the right one. I guess my comment is I find it very confusing, and I've read through it and read through it and read through it and read through it, and I'm having a really hard time distinguishing between some of these different types of data. And so I guess my question is, if the purpose of the policy is really to protect us on the back end when we're making data requests, and so we can be sure that we have in our policy these different definitions to help when we have data requests, I'm not as concerned. If we really want to make sure the public understands, then it's really confusing. And then I would argue that maybe we need to give examples. So I guess I would ask the policy committee the intent of the policy, and if for the intent of the policy, if we're okay with how confusing it is. Because I honestly, I can't discern between like, what is the difference between public data and public data on individuals, between K and M? Those read very similarly to me. And so, and a lot of the different ones. So that's my biggest question / concern comment is totally agree with the approach you're taking. Want to make sure that it's reading well for the intent of the policy.
Thank you. And that was a conversation that we had a little bit at the policy committee with Director Edwards. Question for you, Chair Ellenberg. When you look at the policy, is it mostly the definitions and not necessarily the changes towards the bottom of the policy that talks about some of the practice?
To me, it's mostly the definitions.
Okay.
And trying to discern between the different definitions and the different types of data, because they're very.
Oops.
As we're waiting for her to come back, a question. Oh, you kind of froze up on us for a little bit there, Erica.
Sorry. I just
a question.
Sorry, Dr. Stanley, go ahead.
No, that's okay. That's really helpful, I think, for Daphne for sure, because it is Daphne's team who handles all of these. And what I'm wondering is, for Daphne's team and her purpose, they truly understand the difference between those. And when a data request comes in, how they handle that is they go through, they're understanding the difference, and then they will call an individual who is asking for data and let them know, well, I'm not able to release this because it's this information, but I am able to release it because it's this. And having that in the policy allows them to have that information supporting their inability to release it. So I'm wondering what might be some steps for you and for rest of board members, because Director Gabler said that there was conversation about this in committee as well. What are some things? Is it just a matter of changing the language and making it more user accessible? Or
Well, I think given your explanation, Director Edwards' explanation, I'm comfortable with the language as is, and I think it makes sense. Like I said, I wanted to make sure it's more clarifying for me and maybe other individuals what the intent of the policy is, and knowing that this added language is really a tool for a communications team, I think is very important, as opposed for it being a tool for the community. Because if it was a tool for a community, then I would be really concerned. And then I would suggest we really need to figure out how to simplify it. But as is, since it's a tool, it's more an inward tool, I don't have concerns. So.
Okay, thank you for that. And Director Birdman.
Just as a member of the policy committee and trying to get a little clarification one more time. In order to do the part that Daphne's looking for, to where she can then point to someone when they come in with their request, the language and the definitions to clarify, this is the definition of what you're asking for, and this is what we can and can't do with it. So I heard you saying you agree with that, it's not a problem. But for a tool for a community member or someone who wants to access data requests, you said something about giving examples. The one thing I share with you is what is the type of data that is accessible through a data request and which ones are not. The definitions doesn't categorize them in that way. And so that's where I think it gets to a little part of the where it could be confusing to a lay person who's not really, involved with this, to recognize, okay, well, these are the areas for which I can do. So what I'm wondering, don't know, is whether we change the policy or not, I'm not so sure is necessary, but in the data request form or what's going on, that are we clear about these are the types of data that you can legally gain access to from whatever it is. And so when they're checking the box, this is what I'm looking for, it kind of guides them that way. I don't know if that would help kind of bridge the two things I've heard tonight.
Requests come into a data request inbox. And so someone they either quote the statute that says they should have access to this data, or they just make a request and refer to it as a data request. So it starts off as broadly as the requester makes the request. And then I pick it up from there in terms of deciding how to respond. If someone asks for something that they legally can't have access to, then I respond and explain that to them and explain why. Most of the requests that come in, I am able to respond to. I might need to have part of the data redacted, but for the most part, I am able to reply to them.
Got it. So then that tells me that what Erica was asking about in terms of the use of this policy language is really for our purposes. That makes sense given the nature of how requests come to us.
I think so. And, this really gets into a lot of fine detail. A lot of fine detail, I think, and designed to cover and advise many, many districts. And so as a result, I think we end up going really wide in terms of the definitions that are included because of that purpose. It's meant to serve anything that could possibly come up. And I think it is written to protect the school district.
Thank you, Director Birdman. Does that answer your question? Okay, great. Director Mann, I see your hands raised.
I was just going to say, like our website, we have our data request form where we have that information, kind of like what we were talking about as far as having information for the public. I guess the way I looked at the policy, meaning the kind of intended audience for that is our communication staff or kind of our legal eagles. And like Director Birdman said, having that kind of differentiation for members of the public. We have some of that information on our website under the data requests kind of form, and there's some information on there that I think is really helpful if we're worried that the policy isn't maybe accessible enough I don't know if that's maybe the audience for it, if that makes sense, I guess. And we have that online, so I think we're kind of covered that way. So I guess I was fine with the policy as written.
Okay, thank you. Board members, are we comfortable moving this to action as is? I can't see all your faces, but unless I hear dissent, I will assume that we're okay with this moving forward. And thank you, Director Edwards. I know in committee you talked about how having a couple of years in this position under your belt has really helped you refine this policy to make sure that it is usable for your team and also just in the best interests of our students in our district. So I appreciate your work on this.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. All right, then we will move on to our next policy up for discussion this evening, and that is policy 414, mandated reporting of child neglect or physical or sexual abuse. And for this, we have our Director of HR, Sonia Sealer.
Thank you, Director Gaylor. Chair Ellenberg, Dr. Stanley, members of the school board. So policy 414, as Director Gaylor said, provides our policy around mandated reporting of child neglect or physical or sexual abuse, specifically for minors, for children under the age of 18. This policy was just modified in August of 2023. And at that point, we actually went through quite a few proposed changes. So at this point, the only changes being recommended by the policy committee are those to follow the board's style guide. One reminder, typically we keep statutory citations in the legal references portion at the end of a policy. And in this case, we do have them at the end, but we typically remove them from the text, from the body. The policy committee made the decision a year ago to keep the statutory citations within this policy and actually also within policy 415, which will come up next. Because when you're, sadly, when you're dealing with something like mandated reporting for child maltreatment, it's, you're often working in quickly, and it's in order to be able to retrieve the information you need in a really expedient way. It's nice to have those statutory citations right in the body of the document. And so the policy committee continues to make the recommendation to keep those citations in the policy. But with just those few proposed changes for the style guide, there really were no other proposed changes at this time. Are there any questions?
Okay, thank you. Well, then this one will move forward for action in August. And I said this with 113, but all of these policies, most of these policies that we are reviewing tonight are our annual review policies. And so we're doing it here at the beginning of the year so that we are set for the upcoming school year. So, all right, then next up we have policy 415, which is mandated reporting of maltreatment of vulnerable adults.
Great, thank you, Director Gabler. Also, this policy also was last modified in August of 2023. And again, we had a number of proposed changes at that time. So at this time, our only proposed changes were a few based on our board style guide. And with that, I ask if you have any questions.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you for your work on this, Director Saylor. And next up, we have 524, which is our electronic technologies acceptable use policy. And this evening we have Nathaniel Lindley with us to talk us through the changes that have taken place in policy 524.
Thank you very much. 524 is our acceptable use policy for students and employees. And the only changes since this was revised last year heavily was to add a little language to clarify a required new MSBA edition to state that the school district will establish rules and procedures regarding student possession and use of cell phones and other electronic communication devices in schools.
And to provide just a little bit more background on that, in the most recent legislative session, the requirement came that districts will have a policy related to cell phone use. Historically, the policy 524 was really, and Nathaniel, you can talk to this, the aspect around a cell phone was more related to access onto the network system and things like that. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so previously, the acceptable use policy spoke a lot about what's appropriate use of both personal communication devices like a cell phone or a personal laptop, as well as district devices and district accounts, and appropriate use around the technology tools, information resources, and like that. And so there's a lot of detail in there covering inappropriate use and policy around our district accounts and resources. This adds the element of the student cell phone and communication device possession that we will be creating rules and procedures around that to meet the requirement this spring from the state. So the bulk of the policy is really unchanged in terms of appropriate use and consequences. And it has the appendix of the acceptable use policy that parent, guardians, and students and employees see as well.
Right now, the Minnesota Association for Secondary School Principals, the Minnesota Elementary Association, Minnesota Association for Elementary School Principals, they are being pulled together as part of this effort to really look at a template for what a possible policy could look like. We do anticipate utilizing two policies that we already have in place, cross-referencing them so that is taken care of. And right now, our new assistant superintendent, Nate Swenson, is pulling together the team of administrators so that they can really map out the protocols and how are we going to live out the plan of no cell phones K-8. And so they are really working together to map that out. All of that information will be made available to families before school starts and be available in our handbook as well. So right now, this policy has the requirements based on legislation, and we will move forward with updating that as we move closer to getting that information. That policy, school boards are required to have a policy on cell phone use, not what will happen, but a policy on cell phone use by March 15th of 2025, because we were ahead of the game with the task force that we started back in November. We're just a little bit ahead of where school districts are typically at right now.
Are there any other questions?
I'm sorry, I was trying to raise my hand, hit the button on my, it's crammed into a box to my phone to stand upright. I couldn't get my hand button, so sorry.
All right, Chair Ellenberg, do you want to go? And then Mr. Bergman has his hand raised.
Sorry, Michael, I was trying to press the hand button. So I don't have a question, but just a comment. So I just wanted to reiterate or reinforce what Dr. Stanley was saying, which is that for anyone watching this that's concerned about the cell phone issue, the update to this policy the vagueness doesn't necessarily reflect the current practice and what we're working on. It's an update to this policy as a placeholder for now to make sure we're meeting the requirements of the state as what we're doing as a district is evolving, and as we get more information from several different associations that are working on what these policies should look like, the community will see updated language in this policy and another policy about cell phone usage in Edina Public Schools. So I just wanted to make sure that I was reiterating what you said, Dr. Stanley.
Thank you.
Director Birdman?
Actually, what I was going to ask has been covered. I think the main thing is it's not just the policy, but in our handbook would also reflect what these requirements are. So when we think about our students and their families, they will have multiple touch points as to when we eventually come to a decision as to what we're going to do moving forward. It will come through in those methods. So I just wanted to reinforce that. Thank you.
Yep, and in addition to that, one thing, our policy 506, which goes pretty closely in alignment with our student handbook, will also be one of those policies that we may, as a board, as both the state working groups and our internal working groups, work through what our cell phone approach is going to be in Edina Public Schools. 524 and 506 are probably the two that might come back to us. Even though they are both policies that we review annually, they might come up before next June, depending on what we hear from any of those groups. Other questions from the board? Great questions, by the way. Okay, thank you. Then Nathaniel, this will come forward to us for action in August. I appreciate your work on this.
Thank you.
All right, and then we have policy 806, emergency management. And Dr. Stanley, are you taking the lead on this one? Okay.
Yes. So thank you. Policy 806 is a policy that we are required to bring forward for review every year. You remember last year, former Director Natasha Mansas-Daly, as part of our work around safety and security, completely revamped this policy and added some details related to the protocols that we use around I love you guys and things like that. Therefore, there weren't significant changes in there. One of the areas that we have changed is related to active shooter drills. We do not conduct active shooter drills within our district, and it just made sense that we remove any information related to that, because it being in the policy may lead community members to infer that we do conduct active shooter drills. We did take that idea to our legal team to make certain that we just weren't missing anything. And in speaking with Trevor, he said we absolutely do not need to have that in the policy. And so you will see that anything related to active shooter drills is struck out. So that's why that's in there. You'll see that there are some ancillary changes around wording that relates to our style guide and some changes last year. For instance, last year, we were working to develop protocols, and now those protocols have been developed. And so now we're moving to continually monitor those protocols to make sure that they are effective around safety and security in our district.
Board members, are there any questions for Dr. Stanley? Chair Ellenberg.
It's me again, the policy nut. I don't know if it's a question or a comment. I'll just say it. In the last section under communications, section 8, we state that district administration will implement and monitor the following communication procedures. And then the first bullet says uniform warning system that notifies staff and students of a crisis situation. Examples include PA system, email, strobes, and phone notification. And I guess I just wanted to point out the that we're talking about not utilizing phones K through 8 on the one hand. On the other hand, we have a policy that says we're notifying may notify students of a crisis situation with a phone notification. And because it says examples, I'm comfortable leaving it in there for now. But I think at some point the board and or the community, we have to have a conversation about the conflict between the safety notification utilization of phones and the urge and interest in restricting all phone usage at especially the secondary level, because those two things are in direct conflict to each other. And we have to make sure that we are meeting all these different needs. And I don't know what the answer is, but I want to make sure that we're not promising something from an emergency management perspective that we can't execute on because of a cell phone policy that we are putting in place. And like I said, I don't necessarily need or want to change tonight because we, like I said, we say examples, but that is something that with all these different moving parts, we have to have our eye on the ball on that.
I definitely appreciate that. And I think for sure there, we could move as we look further into that, into providing some clarity. For instance, we use really that's about robocalls, right? When we're notifying our families, not necessarily the kiddos with their cell phones, but you have a very valid point. Quite honestly, when we went through the I Love You Guys training recently as a broad district-wide leadership team with 50 something of us in the room, we also had the chief of police, Chief Milburn, and we also had chief of fire, Chief Slama, as well as several lieutenants and sergeants co-attended that training. And one of the things that the I Love You Guys trainer specifically stated is that very fact that you're putting on the table, Erica, the tensions that come up with in the event that there is a situation where we really need to communicate with our kids, that most of the time it is with cell phones. And so that is a tension that we are going to have to navigate within the community. And I'm really excited in that our new assistant superintendent just led the process in the district that he came from in saying that there was no cell phone use within the grade structures that we're talking about right now, that we have that. So I'm happy that we're going to be able to lean on his expertise with that, and we'll be able to continue to work with I Love You Guys as well.
Chair Ellenberg, does that satisfy? Okay, great. Thank you for that. Director Hoovey.
When I read that, I think of somebody who may be in an office who has a phone, or I do know in the past, classrooms had phones. I don't know if that's still the case or if that is the case in Edina. And as I read that, that's what I was thinking, because it doesn't say mobile phone, it just says phone. So I was going toward some sort of call that might go out to desk phones or classroom phones to notify staff and students. There may be a situation where you're not using a PA or something like that. So that just a perspective that I had on it.
Thank you. Other board members that may have questions on policy 806. Dr. Stanley, I did have one question up in section, where am I here? I think it's in section 6 under C, where there's been some language that's been changed about, and it says each school site will have at least 2 employees, a health service assistant and licensed school nurse certified in CPR. In a medical emergency situation, the district health service supervisor will establish a care team to respond to a situation. When I read that, it seems like there's an emergency happening in a building and it'll be the district health supervisor who then gets called and says who's going to respond to the situation. But I'm assuming that it's really ahead of time, the district health service supervisor is saying, hey, in the case of an emergency at Southview Middle School, this is the care team that will be responding to the situation. Is that how I should be reading that?
Yeah, in a real live typical day situation, what is going to happen is that LSN, the folks who are designated, will actually be the ones to respond. 99.9% of the time that happens. And there may be a time when one of those individuals are actually out of the building. They may be on vacation or something like that. And the health services supervisor then coordinates that to make sure that that building has that care team support that they need. So they may say, you know, if it's something at Southview and there was a person that wasn't there, they may call over to Concord and say, hey, I need you to go over and help Southview with this particular situation.
Okay, that's helpful clarification. And I assumed as such that those plans are in place. And as I was reading it, it was like, oh, this sounds like it's happening in the moment, but it should be read as a proactive statement. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that clarity. Okay, seeing no further questions, all of these policies will move forward for action in our August meeting. Thank you all for your attention to detail in reading these policies.
Thank you, Director Gabler. We and the policy committee and all the administrative individuals that worked on the policies. We're going to move on to our action items. Do I have a motion to approve the Minnesota State High School League membership resolution?
So moved. Second.
I believe Assistant Principal and Activities Director Troy Stein is here to talk to us about this resolution.
Good evening, Board Chair Allenberg, Dr. Stacy Stanley, Superintendent, and the entire school board. It's good to be here, and this is a fun action item. So on behalf of Edina High School, we would be honored to be a member of the Minnesota State High School League once again. Interesting little fact of over 600 member high schools are a part of the High School League, and around 80% of those schools have enrollment of less than 500 students. So we are a rarity, I guess, in terms of the size and scope, and certainly proud to be a part of it, and also proud to be super successful in our membership within the High School League as well. So open to any questions that you may have in regards to the video that I believe you had a chance to watch beforehand as well.
Do board members have questions or comments? Seeing none, we will now vote by roll call on the Minnesota High School League membership resolution.
Allenberg.
Aye.
Aram.
Aye.
Barry.
Aye.
Birdman.
Aye.
Gabler.
Aye.
Hoovy.
Aye.
Mann.
Aye.
By a vote of 7-0, the Minnesota State High School League membership resolution is approved. Thank you, Director Stein.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the cybersecurity agreement with Arctic Wolf?
So moved.
Second.
And we have Director of Media and Technology Services, Nathaniel Lindley here. Again, I believe.
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Chair Allenberg, board. So this is our annual cybersecurity renewal with the company Arctic Wolf. Historically, we started conversations with the company in the fall of 2022, and we went into full implementation in June of 2023. So this completes our first year using them as a security as a service contractor. And our renewal is part of the consortium that we're a member of, West Metro Schools, including schools like Bloomington and Richfield and some others. And then we work with that consortium and CDW and our purchasing agreements to negotiate the best pricing on the security service provider that Arctic Wolf is. And so we're proposing or would like to renew that service with them for the fiscal year of 2025, 24-25 year. And that's what's in your packet and the information there.
Thank you, Director Lindley. Do board members have questions or comments about this action item? Okay. Oh, Director Bergman. Oh, thank you.
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you for the information on the contract. I know that as a staff member who's gone through the Arctic Wolf training, so on and so forth, I'm just curious as to how well have we seen our participation with the program, and are we on track as far as trajectory towards where we want to be going with that we found it to be successful. I know it's a cultural thing that we have to be able to have a culture of safety and security, and it starts with all of us humans, and it doesn't happen overnight, so it's going to take a little bit of time for us to do that. But can you provide any sort of input as to the success or the evaluation of their program and how we're doing with that up to this point, even though it's only been a year?
Yeah, so that's a good question. One of the offerings that Arctic Wolf has is called Managed Security Awareness. And the awareness piece is really what you're talking about, is the training that all staff who have an email account receive. So whether you're a part-time kids club supporter or a full-time director, you have the same training. That consists of both phishing simulations, which are sample phishing emails that if you click on and inadvertently open or you get some training on why were you tricked or why did that happen, and it also includes informational videos that just tell you more about cybersecurity scams and challenges. So it's both informational and instructional in that sense. Right now, our security score, if you summarize it with them, is about a 75 out of 100, which is categorized as strong. We saw good improvement in terms of participation and success during the middle and spring of the year, and then it started to decline towards the end of the year in terms of our staff participating in it. And that gives us an idea of the ebbs and flows of people being engaged with the training and responding to it. So that is going to be consistent through this next year. This managed awareness training will continue for all staff. It's about once a month. There's a 3-minute video as well as a phishing simulation once a month. So what I've seen anecdotally is that many of the staff who are participating in that are starting to recognize especially phishing emails and scams that are a risk that get through our filters. And they're starting to question it and either self-report or let one of my team know, hey, I got this. And then we can dig in to find out how big it is a problem. So that's one of the Arctic Wolf features that is provided.
Great. I mean, one other comment I'd make is that I know that sometimes you get these as an email and you get a lot of emails, but at the time the email comes in to do the 3-minute video and process, whatever it's not always apropos at that moment to do it. It's kind of hard to sometimes remember where you're at in that kind of thing. Do you know of any dashboard or any sort of thing from a user standpoint so we can see how well we're doing in terms of staying on track for that participation?
Yeah, that's a feature request that I put in because of that reason where staff forget it and it falls down, and then they'll get a reminder email saying, hey, you've missed these 2 or 3 trainings. I'm guessing some of you have seen them. I have. And you have to go to the end and click finish. So there's not a personal dashboard. There's just an admin dashboard that gives me an idea of who's completed it and who hasn't in a general sense. So that's a feature request that I'd like to see, but it's not available at this time. One of the forward-thinking things I want to do is get myself or a staff member in front of each school staff a few times a year to be physically there with them and to answer questions, stress the importance of diligence and awareness, and be in person in front of staff at buildings in that way to help bring awareness to it.
Thank you.
Director Gabler?
Thank you, Director Lindley, for this presentation. And I, as a user of Arctic Wolf, I've been pretty impressed with the user experience in terms of, at my place of employment, we don't have something like this. So it has been really interesting to see how Edina Public Schools is approaching this. Oh, there's a thumbs up. So my questions, we've been with Arctic Wolf for a year now. And obviously, cybersecurity is a big topic that lots of organizations are talking about. Have we seen, even though we've only been with them for a year, have we seen much of an increase in their costs over this past year?
Yeah, so in our first year with them, it was an annual cost of about $223,224. The original renewal cost was a 13% increase. But I was able to work with the vendor to eliminate a few items that we did not utilize during that year. So part of the strategy that Director Monsas Daly used was, in this first year, let's put more features in to find out what we utilize and what we don't. So we were able to strike out one line item to keep that renewal cost about the same and actually a little bit less.
Okay.
So the Arctic Wolf subscription year to year is about the same, but the increase from the fiscal year 23 was that large 220 some $1,000. So that 23 to 24 was a big jump. 24 to 25 is we're trying to maintain the best we can on top of other cybersecurity costs that we already had prior to working with Arctic Wolf.
Okay, that kind of gets into my second question. I think you may have just answered it there. That's helpful. And just for anybody that is watching this and that might be working in the district, Arctic Wolf is both the forward-facing things that you've heard Director Birdman and I talk about, but there's a lot of behind-the-scenes cybersecurity that like a user wouldn't see, but someone in your office is very familiar with. So it's not that price tag that you just threw out is not just for those
No.
hokey videos that we get to watch.
No, it's sort of the tip of the iceberg. So that's the front facing. All the stuff in the background is what my team deals with. And we meet monthly with our concierge team at Arctic Wolf to review our security posture and our projects that they help guide us through. And they also alert us of suspicious behavior or other things. So there's a great deal of both hardware and software and people on the Arctic Wolf team that are monitoring all of our data systems or the ones that we can have access to. So whether it's the network or servers or the computers that are on your lap, that's a big part of that Arctic Wolf service.
Perfect. Okay, and I think that my last question, and you kind of touched on this, cybersecurity is an increasing threat for all sorts of organizations, and it evolves quickly. And so, as this board has had to grapple with budget decisions in the last year, as we look backwards, and you touched on it a little bit, we've added Arctic Wolf to our suite of protection a year ago, and certainly our cybersecurity costs, I'm assuming, is it safe to say that that's an ongoing cost that we're going to continue to have to keep an eye on and be aware of in terms of how to protect the district, and that's a big cost.
Yes. So it's both paying for the service that they provide as well as being aware of our cyber insurance costs and coverage, and other tools increasing in cost. So we've had some tools where the license has increased 15%. Sometimes the license annually has quadrupled. So we're not in control of what vendors are charging us. So often we have to look for alternatives that might provide the same service. And I'm not specifically speaking about Arctic Wolf, but the myriad of software services we pay for to help protect the data and to monitor our systems for the district.
Okay.
So yes.
All right. Thank you for clarifying that.
Director Aram?
Just a real quick question. Is there a course, this might be for Mert, I don't know if Mert's on the line or not, but is this more, or is there any kind of credit for having this type of service in our cyber insurance policies that we get back for having it in place?
Yeah, I can't speak to the exact dollar amount, but we would have a much higher premium without some of the strategies, regulations, rules, and restrictions we have in place. And by working with Arctic Wolf, we are trying to lower our premium costs. But Mert might be able to speak more to that, but it definitely plays a part.
And before Mert adds that, would it be correct to say, Nathaniel, that there are some requirements that we have to have in order to even move forward with an insurance policy?
Yes, and that is very specific and has gotten more detailed and specific over time and less general. So things that we're doing with all staff in regards to MFA and putting services behind Microsoft or behind the new ClassLink Launchpad that is coming are strategies we use to help reduce the attack surface and the potential exposure.
And for general public, MFA is related to?
multi-factor authentication. Thank you.
Director Lindley did a great job of providing some of the background details about the actual protocols that we're going through to obtain the best quality insurance and pricing. In terms of the actual pricing itself, I can report that our premium is actually decreasing by about $3,000 from fiscal year 24 to fiscal year 25, due in part to the posture that we have taken as a district, as well as the proliferation of firms that are providing security in the marketplace is driving the price down in the short term.
Thank you.
Anything else from board members? Okay. Thank you for all your work on this, Director Lindley.
Thank
We'll
you.
now on the Arctic Wolf cybersecurity agreement. Ann?
Allenberg,
Aye.
Aram,
Aye.
Barry,
Aye.
Birdman,
Aye.
Gabler,
Aye.
Hoovy,
Aye.
Mann.
Aye.
By a vote of 7-0, the cybersecurity agreement with Arctic Wolf is approved. Do I have a motion to approve the long-term facilities maintenance 10-year plan, fiscal years 2026 to 2035?
So moved.
Second.
Director Woodard.
Good evening, Chair Allenberg, members of the school board, Dr. Stanley. Tonight marks, I believe, the fourth formal board discussion regarding the district's renewal of its 10-year long-term facilities maintenance plan. Due to the extensive coverage of this topic at board meetings as well as at finance and facilities committee meetings, I will forego a review of the previously presented items. Tonight's agenda item and recommended action are to approve a resolution that will adopt the district's updated 10-year plan and authorize the Department of Education to add the long-term facilities maintenance revenue to the district's upcoming 2025 property tax levy, which will fund a portion of the fiscal year 2026 operations. The total amount of the levy is anticipated to be about $20,807,000, of which $9,620,000 is part of the ongoing pay-as-you-go levy authority, with the remaining $11,187,000 or so pertaining to principal and interest payments on previously bonded facilities maintenance debt. Final figures will be included in the preliminary property tax levy that will be presented in September at the regular school board meeting. One thing to keep in mind is that the district has been utilizing facilities maintenance bonded debt on an every other year basis, and we do anticipate issuing some sort of debt this school year. More information regarding that and an official intent resolution will be presented at the September meeting for your consideration and action. That brings me to the end of my remarks. The recommended action is before you.
Director Woodard, for anyone watching that might not be familiar with these terms, could you give a very brief overview of what long-term facilities maintenance is and maybe an example of a few items that would be contained in it?
Absolutely. So long-term facilities maintenance refers to items that the district already has as part of its building portfolio. So boilers within our schools, our roofing systems, brickwork on the outside of the buildings, things that already exist that degrade over time that we need to maintain. All of those items, which are ongoing, we have millions and millions of dollars of deferred maintenance each year. Those items are eligible to go under long-term facilities maintenance. All school districts in the state, with the exception of 28, are capped at $380 per pupil. Edina Public Schools is grandfathered in under the old law, which was sunset in 2015, so we are uncapped. And so we're able to do a lot of extra work on our buildings at a more accelerated rate, which is a great benefit. Items that are not eligible are items that are new. So anything that didn't exist before obviously cannot be repaired because it didn't exist before. So you can't put it into place and then repair it with LTFM revenue. Also things that are not affixed to the building, such as computer systems, vehicles, desks, chairs, etc., are also not eligible to be repaired or replaced with LTFM revenue.
Thank you, Director Woodard. Board members, do you have questions or comments about this before we vote? No? Okay. Ann, I believe we're ready to vote.
Allenberg,
Aye.
Aram,
Aye.
Barry,
Aye.
Birdman,
Aye.
Gabler,
Aye.
Hoovy,
Aye.
Mann.
Aye.
Thank you.
By a vote of 7-0, the long-term facilities maintenance 10-year plan for fiscal years 2026 to 2035 is approved. Thank you, Director Woodard. Do I have a motion to approve policies 506, 717, 805, and 811?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Director Gabler?
Great. Thank you, Chair Ellenberg. These 4 policies are the same policies that you saw last month. The only one that I want to draw your attention to is 506. That policy, there were some questions about the purpose statement last month. And so if hopefully you had a chance to read over that new purpose statement, it's been modified based on the feedback from last month's meeting. And if everybody's okay with that, then that can move forward for action this evening.
Do board members have questions or comments? I shockingly don't, so. Okay, hearing no comments, we'll move forward with a vote.
Allenberg,
Aye.
Aram,
Aye.
Barry,
Aye.
Birdman,
Aye.
Gabler,
Aye.
Hoovy,
Aye.
Mann.
Aye.
Thank you.
By a vote of 7-0, policies 506, 717, 805, and 811 are approved. And that concludes our action items. We are going to move on to board leadership and committee updates. Do we have any committee updates? No. For board leadership updates, we completed our annual review of Dr. Stanley, and I'm going to provide a short overview of our review. Dr. Stanley displays many strengths that the board sorry, I'm going to start over. It's 3:30 in the morning in where I am, so I will start over. Dr. Stanley displays many strengths, and the board feels that she has met or exceeded each of her goals for the 2023-2024 year. Dr. Stanley carries a deep knowledge of the public education space, a strong vision for the future of the district, and one that serves both her and the district well. Stacy demonstrates a real passion for making sure each and every student has the best possible Edina experience. Dr. Stanley does a great job driving consensus between district leadership and teachers, staff, and students by engaging all levels and ensuring alignment to the strategic plan. She connects well with all levels and believes in the vision, mission, and values of the district. Dr. Stanley and the board continue to grow in their work together. This will be an ongoing effort and includes but is not limited to finding ways to incorporate educator voice in our processes and further refining the time and process of board superintendent work. That is a short summary of our evaluation. In general, on behalf of the board, thank you for an outstanding year leading our district. And I know we all really appreciate your leadership and what you're doing for Edina Public Schools. So kudos to you, Dr. Stanley, an outstanding leader for our district.
Thank you, Chair Ellenberg.
And that concludes the leadership updates from the board. Dr. Stanley, do you have any superintendent updates?
I just have a couple of email that came in that I'd like to read for you and to the public. This first one went to Director Jody Remsing, and it says, I want to let you know that I would love to serve on the SEEK committee next year representing transitions, but I also want to take the opportunity to thank you for the leadership of support services in Edina. I'm just so amazed and excited about the many things you have accomplished in such a short time. Approval and implementation of Project Surge, the grant for pair writing, and the huge extension of the unified concept and programming, steps towards the development of the Edina Transition Program, just to name a few. Your creativity, insights, enthusiasm, and quote-unquote can-do approach have created the momentum to achieve the district's mission, and you and Carol is the president, have invigorated SEEK. Have a great summer. Yay to Jody. And then this last one came in just after the school year ended, and I wanted to read it out as well. Hello, this comes from Matthew Gabrielson, who is a teacher a teacher and a parent in our district. Hello, I am hopeful your school year comes to a fantastic close. I have a number of hats I wear in the district: CP45 teacher at Highlands, Edina Hornets girls head girls cross country coach, Edina Hornets head boys track and field coach, and most importantly, a parent of students in 6th, 4th, and 1st grade in Edina Public Schools. I am writing to let you know that the leadership I experience in my roles is second to none. Dr. Kara Rickenberg inspires me to be the best self, to be my best self each day. She is amazing with kids, staff, adults, parents, and basically everyone. The culture she has created at Highlands should be emulated everywhere. You are very lucky as leaders of a district to have her as one of your 6 elementary principals. I cannot emphasize this enough from a staff and a parent perspective. Troy Stein is a person of great integrity and character as our director of athletics and activities. I imagine his job is one much like ours that never stops. He is supportive of his coaches, uses common sense in situations that need it, and makes the right decisions a majority of the time. I am thankful he is our leader. I also appreciate the amount of time you put into your jobs. He wishes Randy Smazel, our former assistant superintendent, a great next chapter. And Dr. Stanley, keep doing your thing. I love that. Have a lovely summer. I really wanted to read that out because Dr. Kara Rickenberg is a stellar principal. And Troy, I mean, bar none, I have shared this in the past that when I was in a different district, I tried to recruit Troy. And I'm really glad he didn't take me up on that recruiting opportunity. Both of those two are the epitome of what excellent leadership is. And they truly do define excellence in leadership. And I just wanted to highlight that because incredibly proud of them, and Jody Ramsey, grateful for our leaders.
As do you, Dr. Stanley. So I think all of our leaders define excellence. So thank you to all of them very much. Without anything else, no hands raised.
I just want to say we're talking about leadership. Thank you for your leadership from 7 hours away in the middle of the night that you on your vacation came to be with us and lead us through our special meeting and tonight's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Nope, I can't. Wouldn't want to get through July without seeing you guys. So thank you, Director Bergman. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
We'll now vote by roll call to adjourn the meeting.
Ehrenberg.
Aye.
Aram.
Aye.
Barry.
Aye.
Bergman.
Aye.
Gabler.
Aye.
Hoovie.
Aye.
Van.
Aye.
Thank you.
I vote 7-0. The motion to adjourn the meeting is approved. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.